Good morning, boys and girls. I'm happy to be back with you today. So the first book we're going to read is Andrew's Loose Tooth by Robert Munsch. Okay. When Andrew came downstairs, there were 3 big red apples in the middle of the table. And even though he had a loose tooth, he decided to eat an apple. So he reached out, picked up an apple, shined it on his shirt, took a bite, and yelled, "Yow! Mommy, Mommy, do something about this tooth. It hurts so much that I can't even eat my apple." Andrew's mother opened up his mouth and looked inside. Oh, she said. "It's a loose tooth. I know what to do." She took hold of the tooth with both hands and pulled as hard as she could, but the tooth did not come out. "Oh, Andrew," she said, "I just can't get that tooth out. Why don't you try another apple? That might make your tooth come out." So Andrew reached out, picked up an apple, shined it on his shirt, took a bite, and yelled, "Yow! Daddy, Daddy, do something about this tooth. It hurts so much I can't even eat my apple." So Andrew's father opened up his mouth and looked inside. Oh, he said, "It's a loose tooth. I know what to do." He got a big pair of pliers and took hold of Andrew's tooth. Then he put his foot on Andrew's nose and pulled as hard as he could, but the tooth did not come out. "Oh, Andrew," he said, "this tooth is stuck. Why don't you try another apple? That will make your tooth come out." So Andrew reached out, picked up an apple, shined it on his shirt, took a bite, and yelled, "Yow! Mommy, Daddy, do something about this tooth. It hurts so much I can't even eat an apple." So they called a dentist. The dentist came in a shiny black car. He opened up Andrew's mouth, looked inside, and says, Oh, it's a loose tooth. I know what to do." He got a big long rope and he tied one end to Andrew's tooth. Andrew said, "I know what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do. You're going to tie the end of the rope to the door, and then you're going to slam the door." "No," said the dentist. "I'm going to tie it to my car." He tied the end of the rope to his car, drove away as fast as he could. When he got to the end of the rope, his whole car fell apart. The dentist just stood there holding the wheel. Then Andrew's mother and his father and the dentist all said, Andrew, that tooth will not come out. You just cannot eat your breakfast." Andrew sat out in the front yard looking very sad. His best friend, Louis, came along and said, "Andrew, what's the matter?" "Oh," said Andrew, "my mother can't get this tooth out. My father can't get this tooth out. The dentist can't get this tooth out. And I can't eat my breakfast." Said Louis. "I know what to do." Louis went into Andrew's house and called the tooth fairy on the phone. The tooth fairy roared up right away on a large motorcycle. Andrew looked at the tooth fairy and said, "If you think you are going to use that motorcycle to pull out my tooth, you are nuts." "What do you think I am?" said the tooth fairy. "A dentist?" She pulled Andrew's tooth with one hand and the tooth did not come out. She pulled Andrew's tooth with 2 hands and the tooth did not come out. She got a large hammer off her motorcycle and clanged Andrew's loose tooth. The hammer broke in 2 pieces and the tooth still did not come out. "Incredible," said the tooth fairy. "This is the first tooth that I cannot pull out. I guess you just can't eat your breakfast." "Hold it," said Louis. "I have an idea." Louis went into Andrew's house and got a pepper shaker. Then he pushed back Andrew's head and sprinkled pepper up Andrew's nose. Andrew went, "Achoo!" And he sneezed that tooth all the way across town. But the tooth fairy still got her tooth. There's Andrew without his tooth. And he ate lots and lots of apples. That was a good one. Okay, the next one is called 21 Elephants, and it's by Phil Bildner. That's a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's the beginnings of the Brooklyn Bridge anyway, back in the day. Okay, let's see. Ever since she was little, a very, very little girl, Hannah watched the workers build the first steel suspension bridge in the whole world, the Brooklyn Bridge. She dreamed of the day when she would finally be able to walk across it and into the big city. When she was 2, she waved to the enormous towers rising from the waters. When she was 3, she pointed to the traveler rope as it first stretched across the river. When she was 5, she watched and wondered as the workers spun the 4 great big cables. And when she was 8, she gazed and gaped as they suspended the floor beams. Hannah's father loved his little girl dearly, but he always clutched her hand a little tighter and drew in his breath a little deeper whenever she peered out at the modern marvel. And when that day finally arrived and at long last the Brooklyn Bridge was complete, "No little girl of mine will cross that metal monster," her father declared as he waved and pointed to the nearly 6,000-foot-long structure that now spanned the East River. And then he added, "Anything that stretches that long and rises that tall can't possibly be safe." When Chester A. Arthur, the 21st President of the United States, stood on the bridge alongside the Governor of New York and the Mayor of New York City and pronounced it the 8th wonder of the world, Hannah thought for sure her father would finally come to his senses. But he simply folded his arms, scratched his chin, and shook his head. Nope, not even the Commander-in-Chief of the United States could change his mind. When Mrs. Emily Roebling, the chief's engineer, took the first ride across the bridge with a rooster, the symbol of victory, Hannah thought for sure her father would see the light. But he simply folded his arms, scratched his chin, and shook his head. Nope, not even the woman who supervised the last years of the entire project could change his mind. Yet Hannah refused to give up. There had to be a way to show her father all the marvels of the Brooklyn Bridge. There also had to be a way to convince him that it was strong and safe. Hannah started with her family. "It's too long," cried her cousin. "It's too tall," said her grandma. "If you ask me," added her aunt, "it's certain to collapse. That bridge looks like nothing more than a bunch of cardboard boxes tied together with string." "With all due respect," Hannah said, because she didn't want to be impolite, "the towers are made of granite, and there's over 14,000 miles of wire. Together, it all weighs 14,680 tons. Well, I'd first power the Fulton Street Ferry with my fists and feet before going over that bridge," her father announced, and everyone laughed. Hannah tried school next. "It's too long," cried her teacher. "It's too tall," said her classmates. "If you ask me," said the librarian, "it's certain to collapse. That bridge isn't strong enough for all that hustle and bustle back and forth. A small town like Brooklyn has no business connecting itself to a big city like Manhattan." "With all due respect," Hannah said, because she couldn't be impolite, "Brooklyn is hardly a small town. Over 400,000 people live here. Brooklyn is the 3rd largest city in America. And with Brooklyn now connected to Manhattan, New York City could one day become the capital of the world. Well, I'd first swim across the river, and I float like a rock before traversing that contraption," her principal announced. And everyone laughed. Then Hannah went to the market by the church. "It's too long," cried the woman at the fruit stand. "It's too tall," said the policeman on patrol. "If you ask me," added the man selling spices, "it's certain to collapse. It's too wide. 1 lane is all you need, maybe 2 at the most." "With all due respect," Hannah said, "the Brooklyn Bridge needs all 5 lanes. The 2 outer lanes are for horse-drawn carriages, the 2 middle lanes are for the cable trains, and the 5th lane is for pedestrians like you and me." "Well, I first would walk on water before I'd walk on that bridge," announced the minister, and everyone laughed. Now Hannah was sad. Why did everyone agree with her father? Why was she the only one who wasn't afraid to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge? Why didn't anyone else share her dream? Hannah's father couldn't stand to see his little girl so down. He knew the one thing that would cheer her up: the circus. This year, P.T. Barnum's greatest show on earth had an added attraction: a herd of 21 elephants. And leading the herd of 21 elephants was Jumbo, the world's largest elephant. Well, the moment Jumbo and his herd of elephants walked into the big top, the idea popped into Hannah's head. Now, Hannah knew Mr. Barnum was a very busy man, probably much too busy to help out a little girl with a big problem. But Hannah also knew that this was her only chance. She waited until the last juggler stopped juggling and the last clown stopped clowning. "Mr. Barnum," she called, "Mr. Barnum." Mr. Barnum walked to the edge of the ring. "What can I do for you, little lady?" "Pardon me, Mr. Barnum, can I please borrow your 21 elephants?" "Why ever would you want to borrow my 21 elephants, little lady?" "Well, Mr. Barnum," Hannah replied, "if you must know, and I suppose you must, since they are your elephants." Hannah took a deep breath, clutched her father's hand as tight as she could, and explained her idea. When she finished, Mr. Barnum folded his arms, scratched his chin, and nodded his head. "Great minds think alike, little lady," Mr. Barnum said. He reached into his pocket, and handed her a flyer. "There's no need for you to borrow Jumbo or any one of my 21 elephants. This is hot off the press. Start spreading the news." A few mornings later, Hannah woke up bright and early. She made sure everyone else was too. Come see," she ran through her house. Come quick, come quick." She ran to the schoolhouse and the marketplace too. "Everyone look." And there, for all of Brooklyn to see, was a sight almost too amazing to believe. The elephants were crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, with Mr. Barnum in the lead. Yes, Hannah finally had found the way to prove to her father, and everyone in Brooklyn for that matter, that the bridge was indeed safe and strong. And from that day forth, Hannah and her father walked across the Brooklyn Bridge as often as they could. So that was built in, and this did happen. P.T. Barnum did indeed march Jumbo and a parade of elephants across the Brooklyn Bridge on May 17th in 1884. It's pretty funny when you think about it. I don't know if you've ever been over the Brooklyn Bridge, but nowadays it's almost always cars, lots and lots of cars, and sometimes people can walk on the side. But back when it was first built, it was horse-drawn carriages and the cable cars. So lots of things have changed, but it's still a beautiful, beautiful bridge. Okay, that's it for today. I'll see you next time.